Do you often feel like you don't belong to this world? You feel very different from the people around you and you don't feel like you fit in. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 reasons why old souls like you and I feel like an outsider. And at the end of the video, I'll share with you what shifted for me and how you can do the same. But first, story time. Hi, I'm Kang. I help people calm their mind and awaken their spirit. At age 13, I was appointed as the class secretary. But one day when I came back from the recess, I saw the class committee having a discussion and a meeting in the classroom, and I was left out. At that moment, I felt like, why wasn't I invited? Why didn't they remember me? Why was I left out from the group meeting? And from that time onwards, I always felt like there's a glass panel between other people and I. I always don't feel like I belong or fit in into any groups. And this image stays in my head for a very long time. When I was in my early 20s, I came out to work as an auditor. The same feeling of doesn't belong to a group or a society came out again. As an auditor, we don't really have fixed desks. We tend to move around. Some of us may be with the client doing our assignment, while some of us are in the office. And one day when I was in the office, I realized everybody has went out to lunch and I was left out. Nobody invited me to lunch. Of course, I could go out to have lunch on my own, but sometimes when you are working together in the finance district, everywhere you go, you see other people in groups. So that day I went into the restroom and I was hiding in the cubicle and sobbing very badly. I have very low self-esteem, but that was a critical moment that changes everything. However, now after living more than 4 decades, the same thing still happens. When I go into gathering and meet up, people naturally will form groups and I will be left out again. But even though the external landscape is the same, the internal landscape has shifted. I no longer feel like an outsider. I will share with you later, but first here are 5 reasons why old souls feel like an outsider. Number 1, old souls have very deep and intense energy. There was once I was having a very deep conversation with another person. Then somebody who just came in to the meetup and the gallery was like, whoa, you have such deep aura, and I don't dare to approach the conversation. I don't want to intrude on the conversation. Old souls have such deep and intense energy. Sometimes it feels very stressful for other people. Some people may not feel comfortable about opening up themselves. Some people don't feel comfortable with such deep conversation. The energy that old souls exude sometimes makes people feel uncomfortable and want to stay away from them. Like they don't know how to strike a conversation with you. It's very funny that oftentimes when I was in a social gathering, my friend and I will be together and there will be a new person who join into our conversation. That person will ask my friend about me. While I'm standing there, I can answer the question, you can ask me directly. But somehow also exude some kind of intense energy that people are afraid to approach us. In the past, when I was very young, I used to think that people don't like me. But now I understand that it's because of the energy that I'm exuding that scares people away. When I was 13, my form teacher arranged our sitting position based on our names by alphabetical order. I was always paired with this other classmate. He doesn't want to partner with me, so he will always ask the class monitor, which is the next person, to be my partner. At that time, I really feel like, why doesn't he like me? Why doesn't he want to pair up with me? But now I could understand that our energy is so different. I could see that he just feels very uncomfortable being around me. And it's not that there's something wrong with me or that he's a mean person. He just doesn't know how to approach me. Number 2, old souls doesn't like small talks. We prefer deep conversation. We prefer intimate conversation where we can go deeper. So oftentimes in group conversation, when the topic is not deep enough or not interesting enough, I find myself drift off to la la land. And I consider myself as a very good listener, but it's very difficult for me to be present. during group conversation. In group conversation, there isn't a real focus. The topic keeps jumping from one to another, and I find it very difficult to focus. Sometimes when I was in large groups and people start breaking out into small little groups, I really don't know which group I want to join. I will go into this group and hear their conversation, and I'll go into another group and hear their conversation. Group conversation is like playing soccer. The players kick the ball from one person to another. For me, I'm like the spectator. I don't know when to jump in or participate in a group conversation. I prefer one-to-one conversation, which the dynamics is more simpler. I see it like playing a badminton or a ping pong. It's like someone serves the ball and the other person receives. This momentum and this dynamic is easier for and also like me. It's less confusing. I can focus more on the person I'm relating to and we can go deeper into the conversation. But not everyone feels comfortable with one-to-one intimate conversation. Not everyone wants to explore such depth in themselves. I still put myself in group context though, because it's the most productive way of meeting people. It's very difficult to get people to one-to-one conversation with you when they don't know you and they don't trust you. And when you go to a group setting, you can see who resonates with your vibe or not. And if someone resonates with energy, you can bring the conversation to one-to-one afterwards. Number 3, also tends to be invisible, especially in a group setting. In the past, I didn't know why I feel so invisible. Now I know. Also tends to be very intuitive, and they tend to be very head in their clouds, like more connected with the spiritual realm, which also means they're not very grounded in their physical body. And when we don't have that physical presence, sometimes people just doesn't notice us. There were many times when I was queuing for food, the owner of the store didn't see me standing there. And what's even more funny is someone will stand in front of me as though I wasn't in the line. As an empath, I can read their energy and I know they didn't do it deliberately. They just didn't see that I was standing there. Recently, I came across this Chinese 5 elements and I found it very interesting. There are 5 different energies that we possess, which is the water, wood, fire, earth, and matter. Knowing about these 5 elements really helps me understand myself better and also other people and how we interact with one another. Social gathering tends to favor some energy types more. Someone who is very dominant in the fire element tends to be more in the limelight and they often attract attention to themselves. Earth dominant people tends to focus on long-term relationship. They tend to be very caring and very nurturing, and they do well in group context too. Wood dominant people tend to be the initiator, the starter of conversation. They have great ideas, and their wood element actually feed the fire element. They give them the fuel to burn, and so they also do well in group settings. In contrast, the water element and the metal element tends to not do as well. And for me, my most dominant energy is the water element, and my secondary energy is the metal element. We tend to be very quiet, very introspective. During a group setting, I prefer to sit back and observe other people. Therefore, most of the time, other people will feel that I'm very quiet and very passive, like I'm not interested in the conversation. But I was just like listening and observing other people. I'm more of a supportive role in a group conversation. I was never an initiator or person in the limelight. If you are an old soul, you probably have a very strong water element too. Water element tends to be very fluid. We tend to flow in and out of conversation. Unlike the earth element, we're not as good when it comes to maintaining long-term relationship, because we are so fluid and we flow from groups to groups. And because we are so fluid, sometimes I think that if I just fade out of the conversation, nobody will notice me at all. When we see that there's no purpose in staying in the group conversation, we may just slowly fade out. I used to work with my ex-company several times, and once when my contract ended, I saw that everybody was so busy, and I just quietly went home without anybody noticing me. I thought nobody would notice that I disappeared. And my manager called me 1 hour later and scolded me, why didn't you say goodbye? Number 4, all souls are usually too different to fit into groups. It doesn't mean that we are special or we are better than other people. All souls tend to be highly intuitive and highly sensitive to energy. So we may bring a very different perspective to life, and that may not resonate with the 3D physical world. From an early age, the 3D physical world doesn't really appeal to us. For example, in my 20s, my peers are thinking about how to climb the corporate ladder, how to make more money, while I'm trying to pursue my passion. And that's because when I was an auditor, I felt very depressed in the job. And one day when I came back to lunch, I saw my female colleagues came out of the office, client's office, and she was crying and she went straight into the restroom. Then at that moment I thought to myself, why are we hurting ourselves so much by doing something that we don't like to do? Is it even worth it to hurt ourselves, our souls, while trying to earn money? I have an epiphany and I started pursuing my passion. All souls are very intuitive since young. We see something that other people around us may not be able to see it. So all souls often find themselves going against the grain or doing something that is against what people normally do. Some people who see it will feel inspired and want to do the same, while others may feel that we are weird or strange. Some people may even be conflict with you because they are not used to living from their intuition, from their soul. And that's why also often feels like they're an outsider and they don't belong to this world, this 3D physical world. Number 5, all souls love time alone. One big reason why all souls doesn't fit in because we want time alone. We enjoy being with ourselves. When I was in school, I will always find a quiet corner where I could be with myself, do my own things before the school bells ring. I don't like to go to class immediately because I find that it's very noisy and it's very rowdy. Sometimes, especially when I was in secondary school when it's a class of 40 boys. And do you know why we like to be alone? This is because we feel more of ourselves and more true to ourselves when we are alone. We feel lonelier when we are with a group of people than when we are alone. In groups, I feel like I have to hide a part of me to fit in with other people. If you share too much of your spiritual self or what your soul desire, you may feel judged by other people. If you go too deep into a conversation, other people may feel uncomfortable. But when I'm alone, I can be more of myself. I can feel myself more. I can spend time in introspection and self-reflection. I can also hear myself, my true self, my intuition better when I was alone than compared to when I was in a group. And when I'm more in touch with my true self, I feel happier. So how can we feel good despite not fitting in? First, you want to respect your own energy and you want to respect other people's energy. Some people will be dominant in fire energy, while some people like us will be dominant in water energy. Some people will do well in social contexts, while others like us will do well in one-to-one and intimate conversations. Some people will feel more energized with lighter topics, while others like us will feel more energized with deep conversations. We don't want to pretend that we're interested when we are not. When you feel drained from a conversation, it's a signal to you it's time to leave. You have to respect your own energy. Don't force yourself to stay. Don't feel like you have to please others or to fit in. And when you don't try so hard to please others or try to fit in, you feel truly free. You feel liberation. You feel more authentic. You feel more like you can be yourself and you feel happier. And this energy will attract other people to you. And because I didn't try so hard to fit in, I can just be myself and share my opinion. And if someone doesn't resonate with my opinion, it doesn't matter. It's just that we have different opinions. After spiritual awakening, my identity shifted from that of an outsider to that of an observer. Even though I'm still like outside looking in, people still form groups without me, I feel a huge internal shift in terms of perspective. In the past, when I adopt this outsider identity, my ego will start to paint a narrative of like what's wrong with me, like why people don't like me, or how I wasn't good enough for other people. Or the ego will blame other people, like why did they do such things to hurt me, why did they left me out. And this narrative that the ego paint actually made me feel like a victim. But when I truly understand myself, I realized that my energy is the type that would just love to observe people. I don't really want to participate so fully when it comes to group conversation, and that changed my identity to that of an observer. I still notice that I'm being left out, and that stings my ego a little sometimes. But now when I left out, there isn't a narrative going in my mind telling me that I'm not good enough or like people don't like me. I find it more interesting observing how people will go into groups and I'm just standing there doing nothing. I come from a more curious and more observer perspective now. And that helped me to not go into the self-pity mode. So for you, you can use whatever identity that resonate with you. If you are more connected with spirituality, but the people around you aren't, like your family members, watch this next video to see what you can do about it.